Hey, everybody. So I have my guest here today, and her name is Beth Wheeler. Beth is a licensed pastoral counselor and perinatal mental health specialist. She specializes in perinatal mental health and trauma healing. Beth has a passion for helping moms with emotions and internal dialogue. She offers both in person, virtual, as well as group counseling. In addition, Beth founded Moms Loving Moms. This organization provides free postpartum kits to new mothers in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and it was founded in 2020. Welcome, Beth. I'm so excited to have you today on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to just be talking all things mom and all things perinatal.
Absolutely. I love talking all things moms and perinatal, so this is great. Awesome. Well, Beth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Beth. I am a counselor, as you said. I am from the Murfreesboro, Tennessee area, which is about 30 minutes outside of Nashville. So, Nashville area, for anyone that's unfamiliar. I am a wife to my incredible husband, Andrew, and then I am a mom to two wonderful children. I have a son named Bruce, who is 3 years old, and then I have a daughter named Emma, who is about a year and a half. They are amazing and keep me on my toes constantly. Aside from that, I've got two cats and a dog. I love coffee. I love chocolate, and those are some fun facts about me.
That's amazing. And I love coffee and chocolate as well. It's I need my coffee every day in the morning, and I'm starting to get addicted to Starbucks, I feel like. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do
Oh my
y'all have
gosh, I know.
is that a big thing in the Nashville areas or more Dunkin' Donuts, or do y'all have like a local place?
Yeah, we definitely have all the Starbucks around here. We've got
Yeah,
all the coffee places
got
with
it all.
Starbucks. Starbucks is my favorite aside from, just like the local coffee places, but I if I had all of the money in the world, I would go to Starbucks way too much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Me too. So, Beth, I just love your organization, Moms Loving Moms. And can you tell us more about that? Like, how did that come about? And just some more information about it.
Yeah. So it started whenever I had my son back in 2020. He was born May 2020. And I had a really rough postpartum recovery with him. It was not at all what I had expected or thought it was going to be. I'd planned for, this beautiful natural birth and it was going to be wonderful and all the things. And it ended up where I actually ended up having to have a hospital birth, which was fine. I was really okay with it. But then the labor, I had like a 38-hour labor. It lasted incredibly long. And just it was not what I had planned for it to be. And then just it came very close to having to be a C-section.
Mhm.
Thankfully, we were able to get him out without having to make that happen. But with what we had to do, I ended up with like third degree tears, and it
Mm.
was just not at all what anyone had prepared me for. And so I ended up leaving the hospital just feeling so unable to take care of myself. I was in so much pain, and the hospital gives you things to last you like 2 or 3 days if you're lucky, not a lot of things. And since I am in the mental health field, I had felt like I'd prepared myself for postpartum a little bit. I tried doing my research, leading up to it best I could, trying to figure out what it was going to look like and what I was going to need. And so I was able to go into it thinking, okay, I needed to order these things that I'd kind of researched ahead of time.
Mhm.
But I just spent the next few weeks just buying all the things I could possibly see I needed to buy to potentially help with just, I don't know, helping me feel like a human again.
Sure.
So about a month or two into my recovery, I'd finally gotten into kind of a routine of figuring out what items I needed and how to be helping in my healing process. And I just felt very passionate about being able to provide other moms with these same resources. I was like, I guarantee I'm not the only mom who has entered into postpartum feeling this way and feeling just blindsided by what it looks like and no one preparing you for what it looks like.
Yeah.
So that essentially kind of started it. I told my husband, I was like, I think I would really like to try and start making these postpartum kits to be able to give to new moms just with all the items that they could possibly need.
Hmm.
Because not only are they things that you don't know that you need or don't have to plan for, but it's also expensive. It's very expensive
Yeah.
having to buy all the items. So it just kind of started from there. And that's just, yeah. So it was a big part of my heart. I was like, I just want to be able to provide this for moms. And that's where it started. And here we are.
That's amazing. So what kind of things do you include in the postpartum kits?
Yeah, so we've got two different types of kits. We have one for a vaginal delivery, and then we have one for a C-section delivery as well. So each kit has varied items. Some items overlap in the kits, but then they have different
Mhm.
specific items for those specific types of deliveries. But for the vaginal item or the vaginal kit, we've got it's valued at about $120. So it's a
Mhm.
substantial kit with a lot of different items. We've got like ice pack pads, the Freedom Mom brand. We've got a couple of Freedom Mom items in there because it's a really great brand and they've got really great quality products. So we've got the ice
Yeah.
pack pads of theirs, and then disposable underwear that is their disposable underwear. It's so much better than the hospital kind. It's like thicker, stretchier, like so much more comfortable. So it comes
That's
with
great.
four pairs of those, and then we give bags of Epsom salt to be able to take baths to not only just encourage like the physical healing that Epsom salt can do, but then also just kind of encouraging moms to just take that downtime. Just like please take baths, like take that time to just rest and sit by yourself while you have the chance. Comes
Yeah.
with compression socks if you have any swelling. It comes with an upside down peri bottle because those are game changers for anyone who has used them. They're so much better than the peri bottle the hospital leaves you with. You can just throw that in the trash.
Yep.
So it's got the upside down peri bottle. It has some dermaplast, which is like pain and itch spray. So like I personally I use that for I had stitches, and so whenever my stitches
Mhm.
were healing, it was like itching terribly. So you just like spray that, and it just kind of freezes things and like numbs things down there, and it's
Mm.
fantastic. So it comes with that, and then some flushable wipes since you're not supposed to use toilet paper for the first little bit. Trying to think, it comes with a whole bottle of witch hazel because we give. So it comes also with three different sets of pads. We've got super pads, overnight pads, regular pads, and it's like full packs of these pads. So that way the moms are set up for just all the bleeding you could possibly need. But then also we give the full bottle of witch hazel so that you can make padsicles. And it comes with instructions on
Oh.
how to make padsicles because I made probably hundreds of padsicles in my recovery and they were just lifesavers. And it's another thing that
Yeah.
you don't know is even a thing. So we try to set moms up for
Mhm.
success with that. I think I went through probably 3 or 4 bottles of witch hazel. Like I made so many padsicles.
Wow.
Yeah. So I
I
think,
love
and then
that
it's
term.
yeah, they're so great. If you're not familiar with it, it's literally a
No.
pad, and then you put witch hazel on there. You just kind of like pour it all over the pad, and
Uh-huh.
then sometimes you can put like an essential oil or some aloe vera. There's a couple different items, but even just the witch hazel, and then you kind of fold the pad back up, and then you put it in the freezer. And then once
Okay.
it's in there for like an hour or so, then you're able to take it out and you just stick it in your underwear, and it's healing and also just so cooling and so relieving down there. So
Oh,
then it's
wow.
discreet too because the ice pack
Yeah.
pads that it comes with, they're bigger, they're bulkier, kind of like the hospital. So like you're not going to go to the store wearing those.
Sure.
That's not very comfortable. But the padsicles you can just stick in there, and you're like, oh, this is no one knows that I've got some
That's
relief down
amazing.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And then
great.
a couple of other of the items have witch hazel in them. Also, there's like a witch hazel healing foam, a witch hazel, some pad liners. There's so many incredible items. A
Mhm.
face mask to also just kind of encourage just some self care and just a good variety. We try to provide each mom with one of our T-shirts that has our logo on it, and then it says "You are so loved" on the T-shirts. And then also a onesie for the little baby as well. That's kind of
Oh,
matches. It also says "You are so loved" on the onesie. Here recently, we haven't been able to provide all of the moms with those because our funding has been a little shorter than we wanted it to be. So we haven't been able to buy more shirts and onesies currently.
yeah. Okay.
So where some boxes get them if you're in the right size, but several sizes we've run out of. So we haven't been able to include those. But we're hoping next year, once our budget is kind of
Uh-huh.
getting ramped up a little bit more, we'll be able to start including those again.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, and I can imagine like receiving that. I mean, obviously for all of the physical comfort and everything, but I love also how you have those reminders and the mental health aspect and the self-care aspect because it really is so isolating. I know for me, like I felt so isolated during that postpartum time,
Yeah,
and to know that there's this community that just packaged all this stuff just for me and my baby. That's it's just so heartwarming, and I feel like so helpful
yeah.
mentally for that boost that you need with that lack of sleep and the crazy
Hmm.
hormones that are shifting all over the place.
Yeah. It's just what our goal with the kit. It started out being able to just provide these physical items, but it
Uh-huh.
really is just about so much of just we want the moms to feel supported, we want them to feel loved, we want them to know that
Yeah.
like they are not in this alone, and we are providing this substantial, not only just the items, but then in the kit it comes with a welcome letter that includes 3 free counseling sessions that they're able to take up anytime
Ooh,
that first year of postpartum also, so that way it kind of
okay.
encourages them in that sense as well. So we've really tried to really hone in on not just, hey, here's this box of items, good luck. It's, hey, here's
Yeah.
this box of items to get you through right now, but then we are also going to be with you moving forward if you need us in any sort of way also.
Sure. And that truly is moms loving moms. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
Like you're having like a village in itself just from that. And that's
absolutely.
that's awesome. And I know y'all are local to the Nashville area and you have like packing days and
Mm-hmm.
but is there anything like that we can do virtually? Like is there any way we can like donate if you feel that the calling to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anyone is welcome to donate on our website at any
Okay.
time. It's just momslivingmoms.com. You can go on there and donate. We also have a Venmo. It's just at Moms Living Moms. So if you
Mhm.
feel called to it, if anyone is wanting to be involved but is not local and is not able to really come to anything, they can get involved in that way. We
Mhm.
also have a conference coming up in October.
Ooh.
It's a postpartum conference. So for any expecting parent, both moms and dads, it's going to have some incredible speakers on just such a variety of different topics preparing people for postpartum.
Uh-huh.
So we've got that for anyone who's not local but who is still wanting to get involved in that sense. If they're wanting the educational or the support
Yeah.
portion of it, then they can get involved. It's October 12th and 13th, and you can follow us on our social medias, and we'll be updating more about that as well.
That's great. And I'll post all those links on the show notes too so our listeners can access that. And remind
Yeah,
me again, so you said October, what days again is
it's
it?
12th. The 12th and 13th is a Thursday and a Friday.
Okay. All
It's a
right.
live
Great.
conference, but then anyone who purchases a ticket, even if you aren't able to attend live, you can get a recording later on.
Oh, nice. Okay. So even if you aren't available those days,
Hmm.
you can access it when you can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that's amazing, Beth. That's just so inspiring. I feel like, and I'm so glad that you're helping moms in the
Hmm.
area. Now, Beth, I noticed on your website, you define perinatal as one of the most vulnerable, life changing seasons in a woman's life.
Mm.
And you also state that there's a time frame that varies for each woman. And I think
Mm.
that's so important because it is so individual.
Yeah.
Um, and you also state that pregnancy and postpartum aren't talked about enough, which I wholeheartedly agree. Can you tell us more about all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with it being a time frame that's different for everyone, I think that's such an important thing to recognize, because I think
Hmm.
especially going into it your first time and you aren't super aware of postpartum or super educated on postpartum, we tend to just kind of hear just, I don't know, basics of like, oh, postpartum depression, the 6 week checkup. So we kind of get it in our minds like, okay, once we've gotten to the 6 week checkup,
Hmm.
then if we're doing okay, then we're in the clear, everything's great, nothing is going to happen. And that's absolutely not true, because
Hmm.
there can be an onset of postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety or OCD. Like there's so many symptoms and so
Hmm.
many things that can happen even 4, 5, 6 months into postpartum. Really,
Okay.
anytime that first year is still considered to be postpartum. I think a lot of times
Hmm.
once even if you're 3 months, you're like, well, I'm not postpartum anymore because a certain amount of time has passed. But if you're in that first year, you're still considered postpartum. Your hormones
Yeah.
can take that long to really even get close to back to normal. So
Hmm.
I think just educating women on the fact that it can absolutely take a toll even 6 months in, and not to cause any fear or cause any issues of like, well, I'm fine now, but what if I'm not fine later? But
Yeah.
just being able to recognize, if I am starting to have symptoms farther in than I thought I would, being able to say, okay, maybe this could be postpartum related, rather than kind of checking off like, oh, this probably has nothing to do with postpartum because I'm, such a long time past having my baby. I was
Hmm.
actually just having a conversation with a friend this morning. She had texted me asking, she's 4 months postpartum, and she was
Hmm.
asking, she's like, is postpartum depression possible to start showing up 4 months in? And I was like, absolutely. Like, even if
Yeah.
you were fine
Uh-huh.
the first couple of months, like you can still start experiencing these things later on. And so many moms just don't realize that, or haven't been told that, or have just been misinformed.
Sure. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point because it really is like I feel like with the lack of sleep, the hormone shifting and all of that, like I honestly I don't even know when I felt back to myself, but I know it was a very long time, like yeah, at least a year with just feeling somewhat even back to okay,
Yeah.
this is who I am, like you know we all are given the name of mom once we have the baby, but we also have so much more to us, like we have our like I'm Valerie or Beth, and like I felt more like Valerie like at least
Mm-hmm.
after a year, but like and I think that's a good point of like not waiting around for oh is this depression or
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, like not being like scared of it, but just recognizing that oh it could be something that is definitely possible. And so many, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's so much. And I don't know, when with my doctor's appointments, I mean, all of my providers have been amazing, but it's just we just don't have time. I feel like in the healthcare
Mm-hmm.
field to like you have that checklist, and then it's like okay, well, check the boxes, and that's it. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we almost feel rushed, where it's like, well, maybe I do want to talk some more about this, but I don't know if there's time for it. And
Yeah.
so reaching out to friends and trusted friends, family members, and um,
Mm-hmm.
so now I really feel like for me, with my second in particular, was when I started talking to a perinatal
Mm-hmm.
counselor,
Yeah.
um, which I'm so glad I did that. I mean, like all the, like everything else I was doing was helpful, but the perinatal counselor really, I think, pointed out these things of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're in your postpartum period. Cause yeah, it was the same. I think I was like 5 months postpartum.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just was I struggled more with anxiety, a little bit of OCD, but I was constantly thinking, the worst case scenario, or asking questions to myself, and nothing was ever enough, like
Mm.
reassurance.
Yeah.
So it was like this in my mind, this constant thinking in my mind. So the
Mm.
counselor had said, what is the next right thing? Like, just if that's even brushing your teeth, like just do that. And I
Yeah.
felt like that was a baby step, but it was a helpful step to get me out of my head. Um,
Mhm.
and so I'm just really thankful for that support during the
Mhm.
postpartum journey. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
now,
Well, and having
sorry.
somebody who is perinatal trained too, I think is so
Yes.
important. I
Hmm.
think, there's a difference between someone experiencing depression, someone experiencing anxiety, and someone experiencing postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I think being informed and aware of the hormonal factor that is postpartum, I think can be so crucial and important when it comes to seeking out a professional within that time frame. But I was a
Yeah.
similar, I with my first, I really didn't have any I don't know, like mental symptoms. It really was just all the physical recovery that I struggled with my first. And then with my
Hmm.
second, I actually struggled with pregnancy depression. I experienced depression
Hmm.
all throughout pregnancy, where I was just like sobbing so much. And I remember trying to go to my doctor at one of my doctor's appointments, and I mentioned, because they always check in to see how you're doing, and I
Hmm.
mentioned, I was like, I've just been really sad, like just abnormally, like yeah, just not how I usually am. And I
Right.
recognize, like, to an extent that's normal because your hormones are just all over the place.
Hmm.
And it was just kind of brushed off. It was like, oh, well, have you, you could take some vitamin D. Have you been going outside, getting in the sun type things? And she was due in January. So like a lot of my pregnancy was there towards the end. It was like, it was in cold months. It was in kind of like the more depressing season anyways. But
Hmm.
I was just, I was so discouraged by just the lack of sympathy or the lack of taking it
Yeah.
seriously. And I feel like moms are so often met with that. It's like, oh, well, try to do this because, there are so many appointments and you're just trying to get through one person to the next person to the next
Hmm.
person. So being able to have a professional to just really be able to meet with that you are intentionally meeting with, to talk through like what you're experiencing, and that is trained in wanting to help you, I think is so, so important. And being able to get that help early on too, because in my head, I was like, okay, I know like once I have her, my hormones will level out and everything will be fine. I'll be feeling better. And then once I'd gotten the training that I did, I realized like, that's absolutely not the case, because if you haven't been working on your mental health, if you haven't been getting the help that you needed, then your depression doesn't just go away. It kind
Mhm.
of, then once you have the baby, your hormones go on this completely different roller coaster, and then it continues. And so then it continued with postpartum depression, because it went from the depression I was experiencing pregnancy wise that I never did anything about. And I was just so ready to get her out, because I was like, it's fine. I'll feel fine and I'll feel normal after that. And that wasn't the case. And so I think just the
Mhm.
continued education on the different things that can happen and how to talk about it and who to talk to about it is so important.
Yes, that's such a great point. What would you recommend, like, if you don't know where to start with obtaining like a perinatal counselor, or like,
Mm,
should you talk to your healthcare provider or search online, or what
mm.
would be the first step?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think honestly, I think you can Google and find quite a few
Yeah.
online. I think
Okay.
just making sure whenever you are seeking someone out, just because a lot of times people will put, pregnancy or postpartum in their specialties, and just kind
Mhm.
of really checking in on like, okay, is that just you like working with that population, or have you been educated in that population? Seeing like what are your actual specialties? Like, is that something that you have received training in? I think can be. And not to say that if you haven't, you can't be helpful, because you absolutely can. It's better to
Yeah.
see someone better than no one.
Sure.
But I think just whenever you are seeking out someone, just being able to kind of do your research and see, okay, why are they listing this as their specialty, and really just
Mhm.
even just seeking in general, just postpartum depression counselor, or I don't know, and not just seeking someone that specializes in depression, trying to find someone who focuses solely on moms and motherhood and pregnancy and depression, and has that as part of their experience.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you have also on your website, I noticed you do group sessions. Is that something
Yeah.
that you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah. So it's actually, I've tried doing groups a couple of times.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't actually had any moms sign up for the groups. It has not actually been
Mm-hmm.
successful group counseling, but I think it could
Mm.
be such a beneficial area, because I have heard of other
Yeah.
other areas who have done group counseling that can be so beneficial. So my idea with the sessions that I was trying to put together was to
Mhm.
be able to have moms in similar life stages. So I think the first one that I was hosting was, I think, just 0 to 12 weeks. So just the very
Okay.
new early onset moms, which is also such a small demographic and such a small population. So it's difficult to like find the right moms that are in
Mhm.
that area that are also interested in it. But I think gaining that community and
Mhm.
gaining moms in your like very similar stage, and being able to talk through like what you're experiencing and see what other moms are experiencing, being able to see what's normal while also having a professional to kind of be, I don't know, educating them within the mix. So it's not just getting together with friends and talking through all these things. It's being able to talk through it and see everybody's experiences, but also being able to be provided with tools and resources. And okay, how can we work through this, and how can we help each other manage this, rather than just, yeah, I'm depressed, I'm feeling depressed too.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the idea of it. I actually haven't tried to host another one. It's been a little while, but I do plan on having those again in the future, because I think they would be really beneficial. I'm just trying to figure out the
Yeah.
right the right demographic to where it is received and where people actually do show up, because I think that's
Sure.
something I have realized with moms also, is we very much we put ourselves on the back burner. So even
Yeah.
if it is something that's like, that would be great for me, if it costs any money, or if it's going to take time away from our kids or time away from our husbands or anything, it's like, well, I'll wait, I'll do that later, it's not that important. And so
Yeah.
being able
Mhm.
to really advocate for the moms and help them recognize like, this is important for you to be doing this for yourself, to be able to best
Yeah.
take care of your kids and best take care of your marriage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that would be a wonderful, like, I think so many moms would benefit from that. I agree. And well, I hope that you're able to find that right demographic. And I
Yeah.
think I also notice that if you don't mind sharing, it sounds like you also are working with your husband too on, or you're
Yeah.
combining practices as well. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So he just recently completed, or he's basically done with his schooling in pastoral counseling as well. He's been working on that the past 2 years. He
Uh-huh.
just has a couple of case studies that he needs to write, and so. we have talked about combining practices. He's felt very called to work with couples. I have never felt called to work with couples. I know that's not my area. So he has started his practice the past few months, just kind of getting the feelers out. Like, hey, I'm about to be done with school. I'm about to start, seeing people. And then
Mhm.
after we're talking through it, we were like, it'd be really great if we could just kind of combine that way. It's just we have a variety of, I see mostly women. I do see some men, but not very often. I see mostly women. I've got certain demographics, and then I have him to refer any couples to, and he sees individuals as well, but he'll see more men and have a little bit of a different focus.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we just did that this week of just deciding, we're gonna do this, we're gonna combine, and we're able to kind of advertise together, which is really awesome. And I'm excited to have him just join in the counseling world.
That's very exciting. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you guys.
Thank
And
you.
remind me, so it sounds like you do all virtual as well as in person. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had been, so before COVID, I'd had an in person, I'd started in person, and
Hmm.
then COVID happened. So then we went virtual for a brief period of time, and I really loved it. And so I
Yeah.
stuck with virtual up until this year. So for a good 2
Hmm.
years, I was only doing virtual, and really didn't know if I wanted to go back in person. I was
Hmm.
loving it being, this is my home office. It's very comfortable. It's convenient, and especially with having young kids, it's so nice being able to just kind of go in and out and see my kids in between sessions and be able to have those breaks with them. But
Yeah.
then this year, we did decide to kind of get a space for anybody who was interested in person. There for a while, nobody really cared to be coming in person, so it
Hmm.
really wasn't an issue, and it wasn't something that I felt like I needed. But this year, more people have been a little bit more interested, and especially with moms too. I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, it's a hit or miss with moms there. It's either convenient to meet virtually, so that works best for them,
Yeah.
or they're like, please get me out of my house so that I can have
Yeah.
some privacy to be able to talk. So sometimes having them come in person can be helpful, so then they don't have the distraction of the kids pulling on them or trying to do it during nap time, or, all the fun obstacles of that. So yeah, we do
Absolutely.
have a space in person that we offer limited sessions as well.
That's great. And you had also mentioned a bit about you do trauma and trauma counseling, and as well as specializing in temperament. Can
Mm,
you talk some more about that?
yeah. Yeah, so probably a good like year, maybe less than a year into my counseling practice, I realized, trauma just kind of shows up in
Hmm.
everything. Almost everyone has some form of trauma, whether that be the
Yeah.
specific thing you're coming to counseling for, or if it just kind of has impacted you. So I realized pretty quickly on that trauma was something that I needed to be a little bit more educated on, and figuring out how to best help people heal, and how to best just give them practical tools, even in working through the trauma that does show up in sessions. So
Hmm.
I went through an intensive training that was I think it was like a 2-day training, on just how to, it taught you a lot about the brain and just kind of how trauma works and how your brain functions. And it was very
Yeah.
practical and so interesting. So now I'm able to work with clients, and I'm not going to say I'm a trauma professional. I'm not an expert in it, but I feel like I have a good foundation and understanding of how it impacts us, and how to just even start to help other people understand that too.
Sure.
So being able to just kind of make it aware of like, this is what has happened, and this is why you are behaving the way you are. This is why your brain is thinking the way that it is. So then
Hmm.
working through what we need to do to start working or changing how you have been thinking, and changing those thought patterns, and recognizing like, you don't have to stay stuck in this. Like, we can work through this, we can heal from this, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take intentionality. And I think
Hmm.
also just offering that space for people to realize that they need to process things, or that they need to talk through things. I know, especially
Yeah.
with moms, whether it be a traumatic birth experience, or if their child was in the NICU, or just anything that wasn't planned, or that was very unexpected and not what they imagined the first month of their child being in the world looking like.
Hmm.
It's very easy for us to just kind of, we're just in this survival mode while it's going on, and we're just kind of doing what we have to do to make it work, and to just take care of our child. And it's very easy to just push it down. It's just, this is
Yes.
just a time that was stressful, but like, I'm not giving my time to think. I'm not giving myself the time to think on it. I'm not giving myself the time to really process it.
Yeah.
And another tendency with moms is just, it's, we are on the back burner. It's my feelings are down here. I don't have time to think about my feelings. I don't have time to process this. It's fine. So even just giving them that space to just recognize, like, we can talk through that experience, like we can work through that, we can express what you were feeling, and any sort of frustration, any sort of anger, any sort of fear, any sort of sadness, like let's just talk through it so that you're giving yourself the freedom and just like allowing yourself to process that. I think can be so healing in itself a lot of times. Just, you don't have to just hide it. Like, we can recognize that. We can recognize that it was difficult, or that it was not what you planned, and that it was stressful. And I think the more we're able to work through it, even in just that sense of just acknowledging it, can be so healing and can help us move forward. Because if we don't, then we don't realize how much that sort of thing can impact us moving forward. So just
Absolutely.
working through it so that moving forward, it doesn't show up in ways that we didn't intend for it to. A lot of times that's what happens if we just leave something alone thinking it'll go away. It doesn't go away. It keeps showing up.
Yeah. That reminds me, I know like when I was doing the perinatal counseling, like it had a similar thing where had NICU with my
Mm,
first child. And
mm,
I do think like I didn't process those feelings. And then the second time around, like I just didn't recognize that, okay, like this was from unprocessed feelings from my
yeah.
first, and now here it is showing up, which I did not expect it to show up in the way that it did. And my counselor helped me recognize that, and it was like putting my feelings to names and like labeling them,
Mm-hmm.
that it
Yeah.
was so helpful. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me, like even like draw, like I don't know if I can say what I experienced with trauma, but if I draw it out, that can help me sometimes.
Mm,
But I mean, I know
yeah.
everyone's different with that, but it is so, I think so much, I agree. Like so many of us have trauma, but we just don't, we don't even know it exists, or like, part
Mm-hmm.
of living is that there are events that we just don't know how to, I guess, our brain doesn't know how to comprehend them, and how do we work through
Yeah.
them when it shows up later on, or,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
um,
even just being able to help give practical tools, or even
yeah,
breathing techniques or grounding techniques to just help, especially when anxiety is showing up, or if you're having panic
yeah.
attacks because of things, just let's practically figure out how to help manage these things. You don't have to just live in that because of an experience that you had.
Absolutely. I think sometimes it seems like I'm almost time traveling, like when that's happening. Like I'm not in the present, I'm either in the past or I'm in the future of
Hmm.
anxiety. And my kids though, and my spouse and all that, they're in the present. And in order to meet them in the present, like how do I ground myself now? Like in
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
breathing and all that, like
Yeah,
so
help yourself feel
important.
a little bit more in control of
Yeah,
the emotions and of the feelings, rather than letting the feelings control you.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And as far as temperament, and now remind me, I remember hearing that like with babies and stuff. Is that kind of like what the temperament you're talking about, or how what kind of temperament stuff do you work with moms?
Yeah, yeah. So the program that I went through to get my licensure, so I went through the National Christian Counseling Association, or the NCCA,
Hmm.
and they focus heavily on just incorporating temperament and basically counseling out of understanding how that person is wired. I
Okay.
didn't realize that whenever I went into the program. I had no idea that temperament had anything to do with what I was going to be learning, but it was actually really fascinating. So it's talking about the five basic temperaments. So it's got the supine, the choleric, the melancholy, the phlegmatic, and the sanguine. So
Mm.
it's five
Hmm.
different temperaments, and we approach it with the idea that temperaments are placed in you in your mother's womb, and they don't change over time. So everyone has different temperaments, and you can have a blend of temperaments. So it breaks it down into the areas of inclusion, control, and affection. So you can be different temperaments in all of those areas.
Hmm.
And so essentially, the way that it can show up and can be helpful to identify is our temperaments are things that are placed in us from, whenever we're being created, and they don't change, where our personality is something that we can create ourselves, and that can be molded based on our environment and just the way we were raised and things like that. And so it can work out where our personality can actually clash with our temperament, which
Mm.
causes some chaos and causes anxiety or causes stress that we don't really understand. So a simple example would be, if you have some temperament that is more um, introverted, so you are a little bit more introverted internally, but you kind of created this extroversion personality for yourself because you were raised around a lot of extroverts, or you just like knew people that were extroverts. So you're like, oh, I like that. So I'm going to make myself that. Or, I want to be a people person. So then you think that, oh, I'm this extroverted person and I love people. But then whenever you are realizing, like, why am I so exhausted all the time whenever I'm hanging out with people? Like, why do I not just get energized? Because actual extroverts get energized by being with people, but introverts, as we know, like they get exhausted and they need to recharge. And so
Mhm.
being able to recognize, like, oh, my temperaments are actually kind of clashing. Like, I need to be able to recharge because that's my natural tendency. That's my natural
Mm.
need. And so
Mhm.
it can be helpful to just kind of recognize how we were created and what is actually like innately in us versus what we've kind of tried creating for ourselves. And
Yeah.
seeing how that can impact just how we respond to things and certain weaknesses that we have or strengths. And it's very interesting whenever you really look into it. But being able to know that foundation can be helpful with moving forward too. Just I think a lot of times whenever I counsel people, it's very common where they are just like, I just want to understand myself better. I want to understand why I do this. I want to understand why I think this way, or because I'm different than my friend or I'm different than my boyfriend. Why do I not respond that way? So it can be really helpful just like, well, let's learn a little bit more about that. Like, let's take this test, let's figure out what these results are and
Mhm.
see how those could be impacting you or how we could be implementing those to just better understand, oh, that's why this is happening, or that's why your tendency is to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I was very intrigued by it. And I don't utilize it all the time. It's not something that I do with every single client. It's not mandatory or anything, but
Sure.
with certain clients, if it is seeming like something that would be beneficial, it's nice being able to utilize it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And Beth, so I I will make sure that we have all the information in our show notes so our listeners can follow you. I know that we have your counseling website as well as Moms Loving Moms website. Is there anything else you would like for me to include for our listeners, or is that a good place to get all the information we talked about?
Yeah, really the websites and an Instagram or Facebook. I have, especially for
Okay.
moms loving moms related things. We're going to post most stuff on the Instagram and on our Facebook page, and that's
Okay.
just you can just find us Moms Loving Moms. And then I also have
Mhm.
I have an Instagram and a Facebook for my counseling, but I don't utilize it a whole lot. So my website will be the best form for getting in contact with me there.
Okay, great. So I'll post the Instagram and Facebook page for Moms Loving Moms and the rest of the information we talked about. And
Yeah,
Beth, it was such a pleasure talking with you today. I really appreciate
yeah.
your time, and I am so thankful. And thank you so much for everything you do for us moms. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be able to do it. It's an absolute privilege, and I appreciate you having me on here. I'm happy to be able to talk about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.